What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and I wanted to do a review of Guardians of the Galaxy. Now, initially my intention was to do a video alongside Benny and Sal, but the problem is, after the movie was released, after it came out that Thursday, I had to be up at 5:30 in the morning on Friday, and so I just simply didn't have time to wait up for them, and it would have been ridiculously unfair of me to simply tell them put their YouTube channels on hold so they could wait for me. That'd just be extremely selfish. So they're going to do a review together, I believe, and they'll have it uploaded on the respective channels, but since I was unable to join their thing, we're doing a review separate. And what we're going to do is we're going to start this review off with the stuff that you guys want to see, that you guys want to know about. I know you guys want to know about post-credits stuff. I know you guys are curious about the story, about the film, but you guys want to know what's going on. I know you guys want to know post-credits stuff. I know you guys want to know what Marvel's pointing to with the future of their cinematic universe after Guardians of the Galaxy. And here's the really interesting thing. This is what I love the most. The post-credits scene, as most of you guys know, gave us Howard the Duck. They said, okay, Howard the Duck exists in this universe, but that's all anybody focused on. And I think that Marvel did such a good job doing this. What Marvel did in the post-credits scene is they made all kinds of noise and ruckus over here, and nobody paid attention to what was going on over there. I paid attention to what was going on over there, and I'm sure other people did too. I don't mean to say like I'm the lone voice of reason in the world of Marvel comics, Marvel fandom, not at all. But I paid attention to what was going on over there, and what I saw over there were a lot of different things. So, in the movie, we see the Collector twice. The first time we see the Collector is when the Guardians of the Galaxy, at that point in the film, they're kind of the de facto group, but they're kind of a ragtag. They just came together by circumstance. They haven't really bonded as a group yet, but they go meet the Collector, and the whole reason is because Peter Quill has this orb, and we'll get into that here a little bit in this discussion, but the Collector is going to give him just a stupid amount of money for this orb. They don't know what the orb is at that point, but when they enter the Collector's domain and they see all of his collections, we see a handful of things, and Marvel does it really fast. It's super fast. It's a 20-second scan of everything he has in his collection, and of that 20 seconds, I've actually got it listed right here. I made a post on Reddit listing the things that I thought that I had seen or that I know that I saw in the Collector's collections. So the first one is, of course, Howard the Duck. We saw him at the end of the credits. I don't know what the purpose is of having a Howard the Duck in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. When we get into our discussion about Howard the Duck, we're going to learn two things. One, Howard the Duck is stupidly obscure. He appears in 200 and something Marvel comics, and that's it. And the first few appearances are Adventure into Fear number 19, and then Man-Thing comics, and then we get into his solo run for 30 something issues, and then he just kind of appears off and on in different comics. He's just really this character that's interesting, but he serves no real purpose in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. He has no powers. He has Quack Fu, which is a martial arts from his native universe, but he doesn't really serve much of a purpose. So I don't think there was really any point in Marvel including him, and I don't really think they even have any intention to do anything with him, but I could be entirely wrong here. The next person is, next thing that we see is a Chitaurian soldier. And of course, this was simply just the idea of the Chitaurians and the Avengers. But I'm curious about this, because the Collector only really collects things that are either unique or are significant. And so the Chitaurians may be significant at some point in time. I'm not really sure why. I'm not wildly familiar with the Chitaurians and Marvel Comics. To my knowledge, I think they were created specifically for the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but I could be wrong here. But it wouldn't be the first time that's happened. Agent Coulson was created specifically for the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but he became so popular that they just folded him into the comics and brought him into the Ultimate Universe, and then brought him into the Earth 616 universe, I think. So I don't really know what the big deal is with regards to having the Chitaurians in there, but I think it just might be the fact that because they invaded the planet Earth, because they were henchmen of Loki and Thanos, that maybe he thought they were important and they needed to be there. I'm not really sure. There's a Dark Elf, which is really kind of interesting. Of course, we saw the Dark Elves in Thor 2. The Dark Elves, of course, were a very prominent race in the past. They were very significant in terms of what their roles were. The fact that one of them was able to possess the power gem without actually being destroyed in the process, which was the Aether from Thor 2, that's pretty significant. Now, the one that we see is not Malekith, I think that was his name. That's not the one that's in there. It's simply just a Dark Elf. So I guess maybe the Dark Elves are inherently powerful in their ability to all wield Infinity Gems. I'm not really sure yet, and then of course we don't really get that explained to us. We simply just see him there. And like I said, keep in mind, all this is being seen over the span of 20 seconds or so. This next person is somebody that I'm not sure I actually saw. I think it's him, but I can't swear to it. And I think that person is Beta Ray Bill. And here's the reason why. There's a point where we like span around and we see an individual in a red cape, but his back is to us. And we see what looks like Stormbreaker, or at the very least like a very powerful, like some kind of a weapon, a hammer of sorts, like in the box with him. Like it's just great big huge box. Like they're all lined up side by side for the most part. And he kind of looks, you know, like turns to the side for a second, but you don't get like a full glimpse of him. So I don't really know, but something like that seemed interesting to me because most everybody else is facing us. Like we can see everything that else is in there, but it's like this glaring thing, like we can't see that guy. Now, whether or not it's something that I'm reading too much into, that's entirely possible, or whether or not this could very well be Beta Ray Bill, I don't really know. I think a lot of us are just kind of, you know, a lot of us in the fan base are just kind of getting swept up in this whole element of what could be in the collector's collections and what we could actually see later on in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But again, you know, this is just something that I think is kind of interesting. The fourth person I think is probably the most important element of the movie, and this is something that I think no one paid attention to. If you guys remember in Thor 2, in the post-credits scene, when we see the Collector for the first time, there's a great big huge glass box. And in that box is the Cocoon. And that Cocoon houses Adam Warlock, or at least everybody believes that it does. And I think Marvel's even said, yes, that houses Adam Warlock. The whole reason we think that is because that Cocoon looks exactly like the Cocoon from the Fantastic Four when they first encountered Adam Warlock, so on and so forth. They fought the, whatever that group of scientists were. I can't remember what they call themselves anymore. But anyway, in the movie, at the end, in the post-credits scene, the Cocoon is hatched. It's destroyed, and it's empty. Now, I have a hard time believing that this, you know, gem, the harnessing of this gem, of this Infinity Gem that caused the whole explosion in the first place, would actually cause, you know, that would not kill all the other members of the Guardians of the Galaxy, but kill Adam Warlock. So my thought is Adam Warlock is gone, like he's escaped, and he's out in the cosmos doing his own thing. Now, this I think is extremely important, and the reason why is because during the Infinity Gauntlet storyline, Adam Warlock was the one who was rallying all the troops. You know, of course, Silver Surfer went to Adam Warlock when him and Gamora and Pip, his troll, were in the Soul Gem. In the Soul Gem. And he said, look, we need your help. Stuff's getting really, really bad. And Adam Warlock was like, nope, don't care. And then Adam Warlock showed up on the planet Earth with Pip and Gamora. They were in disguise. And then he shows up to Doctor Strange and says, you know, to like Doctor Strange and his crew or something like that. But anyway, Adam Warlock is the one that rallies all the Earthbound superheroes that are available to fight that weren't wiped out when Thanos wiped out half the life in the universe. Adam Warlock is also the one that gathers all of the cosmic entities so they can all confront Thanos. So Adam Warlock is the other side of the equation. You have Thanos himself, more or less, versus the entire Marvel Universe, and the entire Marvel Universe is being led by Adam Warlock. Because of the fact that this film heavily points to the fact that we're going to see an Infinity Gauntlet storyline somewhere along the line, I have a very hard time believing that Adam Warlock will not play a role in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. He's out there somewhere, doing something. The Cocoon is empty. So what in the world's going on? I don't know. It could just be that Marvel says, hey, the Cocoon's empty, Adam Warlock's out there doing something, but we're just never going to see or hear from him again. I don't really know, because in the comics, he only shows up in times of like huge and massive events. So assuming there isn't anything like the Infinity Gauntlet that Marvel that chooses not to go that direction, then we may not see Adam Warlock, but I think they will. The next thing is that we have three of the 6 Infinity Gems that have been established to us in terms of the fact that they exist. I don't remember exactly which ones they are. I know there's the Power Gem, there's the Space Gem, and I believe there's the Mind Gem. The Mind Gem, I think, was the one that Loki was using to control the minds of people in in Avengers. The Space Gem, of course, I think was the one that was in this one, and the Power Gem, of course, was the Aether from Thor 2. I could be wrong about this one being the Space Gem, the one in in Guardians of the Galaxy, but I'm pretty sure it is. But nonetheless, we have 3 of the 6 Infinity Gems, and we know where they are. We know that Heimdall has one of the Infinity Gems. He has the Tesseract, and of course Kevin Feige, I'm not sure how to pronounce his last name. He's the one that came out and said yes, the Tesseract is one of the Infinity Gems. The other Infinity Gem is being held by the Collector himself. He has it as the Aether. He has the Power Gem, and the last one is in possession by the Xandarians. They took the gem that was given to us in Guardians of the Galaxy, and they've housed it on Xandar. The next thing is the quantum bands. Now, this is a big deal. The quantum bands was something that if you really weren't like specifically look for it, or you didn't happen to just like see it, then you were going to miss it entirely. And that's how it was for me. Like, I was looking at so many different things. I was trying to spot everything that was in there that I was like, oh my god, there's the quantum bands. And the quantum bands were in this little glass box, and they were sitting on what looked like a bookshelf or some kind of a shelf or something like that. And there were stuff that was like stored everywhere. It wasn't like sloppily stored. It was stored neatly for the most part, but nonetheless, the quantum bands, of course, are the bands that are worn by the individual that is endowed with the power of Quasar. The first Quasar, I think, was Wendell Vaughn. Now, whether or not we're actually going to see Wendell Vaughn, I'm not really sure. We might see, like, Phyla-Vell. I'm not sure what direction they're going to go with Quasar. And if you guys want me to do a video on Quasar, we'll do one later on down the line. But the fact that we see the Crimson Band, or the quantum bands, means one of two things. Either Marvel simply just, again, giving us a tip of the hat and saying, yes, Quasar it does exist, has existed, or will exist in this universe, but we'll just never see or hear from that individual, or that someone somewhere is going to come into possession of these quantum bands and they are going to be Quasar later on down the road. We don't really know. The last one was really more fun than anything else. It was Cosmo. And Cosmo is the de facto leader, or the head of security, I think, for Elsewhere, for Nowhere, which is, of course, the giant celestial head that floats in space. And he's a telepathic and telekinetic dog. He was actually the Russian dog, I think, that was shot into space by the cosmonauts. I don't remember who it was that shot him into space. But nonetheless, that was just fun. That was just cool, you know, to see Cosmo. So that's pretty much it in terms of the things that I either believe I saw or that I know that I saw. And again, I think this is Marvel simply just setting the stage and saying much bigger things are going to happen later on. Now, on to the characters. The great thing about the characters is that I don't think we got a whole lot of backstory with them. We got some basic explanation, especially like with Peter Quill, but Peter Quill's story is a little bit different in the movie than it is in the comics. In the comics, his mom was killed by the Badoon, and his dad was an alien that took off and left his gun for Peter Quill. In the movie, it's not like that. In the movie, Peter Quill's mom dies of cancer, and his dad is just kind of there, but almost immediately after his mom dies, his dad's like, go stand outside. Peter Quill freaks out, runs off, and he's abducted by aliens, which of course turns out to be, I think, the Kree, and they're Ravagers, which are basically like they're looters or plunderers, and they take him along and they raise him over the next 26 years and so on and so forth. Like, that's literally where we pick up with the film. Like, we see him abducted, and then it's 26 years later. They tell us that Gamora and Nebula are sisters, and they are the daughters of Thanos. Now, they're not directly like the genetic offspring of Thanos. They're simply just like adopted daughters, either by conquest or by kidnapping of Thanos. Ronan the Accuser is really interesting here. Ronan the Accuser is actually a villain. He's not simply just a guy that's being given orders. He is fighting on behalf of Thanos. And his machinations here, in all honesty, I didn't really care for the way they did Ronan the Accuser. Not necessarily because he wasn't like he was in the comics, but because I think his character could have been so much more. Like, in the end, like, he's not necessarily a henchman, but his motives are very short-sighted. In this film, what's gone on here is that the Kree have formed a treaty with the Xandarians, but Ronan the Accuser doesn't like this element, and the reason why is because Ronan the Accuser feels like it's dealing away with the old ways, dealing away with the I guess the historical traditions of the Kree society, and so he wants to effectively like destroy Xandar and in the treaty and basically like take the Kree back to the way things used to be. We don't see the Supreme Intelligence anywhere in here, so maybe the Supreme Intelligence doesn't exist. Maybe the Supreme Intelligence was the hidden hand behind Ronan the Accuser doing what he was supposed to do, but the way Ronan the Accuser is given to us, it pretty much points to the fact that he's doing this of his own accord. But for the most part, he's kind of a hokey villain. I mean, I just didn't really like him too much, you know. It was like, you know, I mean, this is a guy that plays a very important role in Marvel Comics with regards to the Kree. Like, he is the absolute authority when it comes to enforcing the law of the Kree Empire. He simply just does the bidding of the Supreme Intelligence, and he just kind of, you know, I guess in hindsight, he kind of came off like a henchman. You know, he is helping Thanos acquire this orb, because if he acquires the orb for Thanos, Thanos will destroy the Xandar form. Now, we get to see Thanos. We get to see him once in his full, like, person. The second time after that is actually like an image on a screen. But Thanos looks amazing. Like, he looks so awesome. He looks and sounds exactly the way that I hope he would, where he had like this really deep voice. You're like, I am Thanos, you know, kind of thing. It was just a really deep and throaty and huge voice, and I really liked that. I was afraid of two things. The first thing I was afraid of was when they said that they were casting Josh Brolin to play the role of Thanos, that they were going to make Thanos look the way he did when he first appeared in Jim Starlin's introduction of Thanos in Iron Man issue number whatever it was. They didn't do that. But here's the problem with Thanos in this scene. Thanos is not given size in proportion to anything else. We simply just see Thanos sitting in a chair. So we don't really know how big Thanos is. Like, we see Ron and the Accuser talking to him, Thanos is in a chair hovering up there in front of him, but the two aren't standing side by side. So Thanos could very well be, you know, I guess about the size of Ron and the Accuser. He could be 6 foot something and, you know, every bit of 300 some odd pounds and just really dense. You know, he could be the same size as Drax the Destroyer, or he could be 10 feet tall and 1,000 pounds and just like this Goliath of a monster, you know, just as big as Hulk is. You know, we have no idea because we don't have any scale to refer that to. Of course, I think we're going to see that expanded later on. You know, we're definitely going to see it, and I think we'll see some more appearances. I think is what Marvel said. Of course, we'll see him more in Guardians of the Galaxy 2, I think, because the movie takes place out in space and the cosmos and whatnot. The Xandarians. Alright, so we're given the Nova Corps. John C. Reilly was a really great character in the movie, but the one thing that I was really disappointed in is the fact that there was no Nova Force, that they just simply didn't have it. And now, whether or not it's because they chose not to use it or because it simply just didn't exist, I'm going to take a breath and vape for a second. That is good stuff. But whether or not it simply just doesn't exist or they just chose not to use it is something that we don't know. There's no mention of it at all, like no discussion, no nothing, no hint of anything of the Nova Force being in existence. And if you guys recall our discussion about the Nova Force, about Richard Rider and the Nova Corps, we talked about how depending on what level you were in the Nova Corps, you were able to manipulate different facets or a different portion of the Nova Force. And the higher of a rank you were, the more of it you can manipulate. And if you were Nova Prime, if you were the top member of the Nova Corps, you can manipulate all of the Nova Force. You could do pretty much anything with it. Glenn Close didn't have any of that. And in all honesty, I think this was a smart move on behalf of Marvel, and here's the reason why. Glenn Close plays a really good character when it comes to dialogue and character development, despite the fact that she didn't have massive roles in this film. She was really more of a decision maker, more of a leader, and kind of a person saying, oh my god, everything's about to go really bad. We knew off the bat that she was, one, a very serious person. Two, she was the highest ranking member when it came to the Nova Corps. Three, she was no nonsense, and I liked this element of her character. But at the end of the day, you know, I really couldn't see Glenn Close flying around and shooting energy blasts at stuff. It really would have looked hokey and stupid, and I'm glad Marvel chose not to do this. I'm hoping they fix this by saying that they just simply didn't tap into the Nova Force. Maybe they don't know how to wield the Nova Force effectively yet. Maybe there's something going on, they couldn't use it. I don't know what the case may be, but I'm hoping Marvel finds a way to explain this, that we do see the Nova Force, and that we do at some point see Richard Rider. Now, there was nothing regarding Richard Rider in this film. So those of you guys that have seen or have believed that you've seen some kind of confirmation that Richard Rider is going to either be discussed or going to be mentioned or have a cameo of some kind, that's not the case. That's never going to happen. Not in this film. He's just simply not there. Of course, that makes sense because this film takes place on Xandar, and of course Xandar hasn't been destroyed at this point. Now again, the Marvel Cinematic Universe takes place in a totally different universe than the comic books, so we may never see Richard Rider in these films. We may never see him. Xandar may never be destroyed. You know, it all just kind of depends on what's going on. Now, when it comes to Drax the Destroyer, Drax the Destroyer was probably one of my favorite characters in the whole movie. I was hesitant when they said Dave Bautista was going to be playing Drax the Destroyer. I was like, I don't know about this. Dave Bautista's a wrestler, not an actor. He was awesome. One of the coolest things is they were talking about Drax the Destroyer and how he takes everything literally. But here's the problem that I had. They referred to his people take everything literally. And of course, there's one point where Peter Quill says something like he made some comments that it went over everybody's head. He said, this is going to go over everybody's guy's head, and Drax the Destroyer was like, nothing goes over my head. Like my reaction is too fast or something like that. But it was kind of funny. But what I was kind of hoping for here is that they would touch on the fact that Drax the Destroyer was a person at one point in time, that he was a human being. But this is the cool thing. We never get any explanation on the backstory of Drax the Destroyer except the fact that his wife and daughter were killed by Ronan the Accuser. And that's it. We get nothing else. There's no explanation on Ronan the Accuser. Ronan the Accuser just shows up. He's just there. Like, he's in a prison when everybody gets captured, when Gamora and Rocket Raccoon and Groot and Peter Quill all get captured on Xandar, and they're taken to the Xandarian prison. Like, he's just there. Like, he's the big tough guy in the prison, and of course he ends up helping them out, which leads us into Rocket Raccoon and Groot. Rocket Raccoon steals the show, and I think everybody expected him to. I don't think there was anybody that went into this movie thinking that Rocket Raccoon was going to be lackluster. But here was the great thing about his character. He wasn't overpowering. It wasn't as though it was Rocket Raccoon and the Guardians of the Galaxy. He had great lines, he had great dialogue, but he fit in with everybody else, and he was just as funny and interesting as everybody else. And that's what I thought was so great about this movie. The character development in terms of picking up with these individuals, knowing virtually nothing about them, and seeing them progress with the movie was fantastic. The fact that all we knew about Peter Quill was that his mom died of cancer and his dad was an alien, which we actually didn't figure out until much later on, until like the end of the movie, we see his character evolve and grow, and like, we care about his character. We want to see him succeed, that he's this guy that is kind of thrust into these circumstances that he just can't control, that he's so far beyond his head, like, he's so far underwater here. The circumstances are so far beyond his head that he just can't really help but do the right thing. Rocket Raccoon and Groot, of course, are already together. They're really already they have their relationship going in terms of, Rocket Raccoon can, of course, speak for Groot whenever Groot says, I am Groot. And that's really all he ever says. That's one of the cool things that I liked about the film, is they stuck with that when he said, I am Groot. But he actually changed it later on in the movie and said, we are Groot, which of course isn't that big of a difference. But I loved the way his character was done. And that's what I was hoping for. When you have a character like I am Groot, the question that I was wondering is, how is he going to fit into the movie? If all he does is say, I am Groot, that's going to get really boring really fast. But what was really interesting is he would say it with inflections. Somebody would ask him a question, and he would just kind of pause for a second and say, I'm Groot, and Rocket Raccoon would answer for him, and it was really, really cool. It was really good, because even if all you heard was him saying, I am Groot, you understood what it was that he meant, and that's what I thought was really cool about his character. Gamora was a bit of a letdown, to be honest. Now, Zoe Saldana played the role perfect, because Zoe Saldana is my homegirl. But she played it well. I think the writers really kind of did a letdown with Gamora. Gamora is an incredibly strong female character in the comics. She is the premier assassin. But in this one, she's just like a sister with a grudge. She's like a chick with a grudge. Like, well, I don't want to see Ronan the Accuser destroy life, so we're gonna betray him. And it's like, okay, look, that's silly. She needed to be cutthroat. I mean, cutthroat, cruel, willing to do anything to get the job done. There were several instances when I was watching this film and I was thinking she would have killed Peter Quill on the spot. Like, she wouldn't have even asked any questions. She would have just killed him right there and been done with it. Especially when they first meet each other and Peter Quill has the orb that she's trying to capture. Like, she would have just ran him through with a sword and that would have been it. And she would have just taken it and walked away. But over the course of the film, as I saw this element of them effectively like taming down her character, I also started to like her character a lot more. She became more relatable in the sense that, she, if anything, she actually seemed very human in the way that she acted, the way that she talked, which again, I'm not, I like that element, but I'm not really sure how I feel about it, because I felt like the great potential of Guardians of the Galaxy, and I think what it successfully did, is show us that there's all this stuff going on in the Marvel Universe, that up to this point, we've seen Iron Man and Captain America and Thor, and we've seen Earthbound events, things that for the most part, in comparison to what's going on in the Guardians of the Galaxy, don't really matter. Like, I mean, when I was watching the movie, I was thinking about like the scale of things that are going on. I mean, of course, they showed us Celestials when one of the Celestials had the gem in question, and it annihilated all life on this planet. You know, you see like all these different things going on, all these different things happening, and then it's like really, like we're worried about Captain America and S.H.I.E.L.D. on the planet Earth, and that's what I thought the movie did a great job of. The movie gave us scale. The movie gave us an expansion of the Marvel Universe. It showed us that there's so much happening, that there's so much that has the potential to happen. And again, the movie just picks up. I mean, the movie, it goes from 0 to 60 like that. There we go. It goes from 0 to 60 like that. And despite the fact that we're not given a whole lot of backstory on the characters, it's extremely well done. It is an incredibly exciting and fun and fantastic film. And I think that's what Marvel was going for. I think Marvel simply just wanted to say, hey guys, there's a lot of stuff going on here, and we're just going to pick up with it and see what happens. And because of the fact that this film's been so well received, I think that in Guardians of the Galaxy 2, we're going to get more explanation. We're going to learn maybe that Drax the Destroyer was a person. I don't know if we're going to get into the In-Betweener, and I don't know if we're going to get into the Titans or anything like that. But I think that we're going to get maybe some pointing to the fact that Drax the Destroyer was a human at some point in time, and that he's, of course, he's a force. Now, the cool thing here that I thought was interesting was after the defeat of Ronan the Accuser, he says like his job now is to hunt Thanos, which I was really glad to see, because if you guys recall our discussion about Thanos, we talked about how Ronan the Accuser was created for the sole purpose of hunting down Thanos. That's the only reason he exists, that he always knows where Thanos is in the cosmos, and his goal is to always kill Thanos every chance that he gets. And so the fact that they've basically like turned his character into that now, that his goal, his one drive is to hunt down Thanos and destroy him, I think was really cool. I think was really interesting. Over the course of the film, we get to see various races. Of course, we see the Kree. We don't see any Skrulls, which I didn't really expect us to, at least not that I saw. We didn't see any Skrulls. You know, overall, because I think we're kind of running on about 30 minutes on this. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap this review up. But overall, the film was amazing. The film was absolutely fantastic. It was exactly what I hoped it had been. All the Marvel films, for the most part, that we've seen up to this point have been getting progressively darker. Iron Man 1 was really upbeat and exciting, and it was fun. But as Iron Man 2 came along, and then Iron Man 3 came along, they got progressively darker. Captain America, the first Avenger, started out kind of dark, and then it got even darker with Captain America the Winter Soldier. The Avengers dealt with an invasion, and the Marvel events, the Marvel films that we see coming out, Avengers 2, The Age of Ultron, we look to the future of movies after that, and we're not really sure how Ant-Man's going to turn out. The movies seem to be getting more and more progressively dark, but this was just a fun, exciting, interesting, upbeat movie. If you are somebody that has never read Guardians of the Galaxy, if you know nothing about Guardians of the Galaxy, you can go into this movie and love it. You're not going to be confused. You're just going to be like, okay, I mean, I can understand this as things go along. They give you what you need to know as you need to know it, to kind of coin a phrase that my boss told me once. That's basically what they do. And that is one of the things that I think is so great about this movie. It was designed for both us individuals who love comics, and it gave us the homages that we want to see. It gave us the tip of the hats that we wanted to see, but it was also designed for people that know nothing about comic books, so you can go in, sit down, eat some popcorn, throw back some Coke, and have the time of your life watching this incredibly fun and interesting movie. So with that being said, we're at 28 minutes, so I want to bring this to an end. Again, last thing I'm going to mention here, this movie points fingers all over the place and says there's going to be a lot coming later on down the line when it comes to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, that this movie is the tip of the iceberg, and the things that we've seen in all the Marvel films so far, Thor, The Dark World, Thor 1, Iron Man, Captain America, Avengers, all that kind of stuff, those pale in comparison to everything that's probably going to be happening later on down the line. So with that being said, I'm going to bring this video to an end. I will catch you guys later. Peace.